Everything about Jacob deGrom in 2021 said this was one of the greatest pitching stretches ever. The numbers agreed, until one of them didn't. In the summer of 2021, something happened at Citi Field that the announcers did not have the language for. Jacob deGrom threw a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. The hitter swung through it. Then deGrom threw a slider at 92 miles per hour on an identical path, identical release point, identical arm speed, identical first 40 feet of flight. The hitter swung through that too. When analysts overlaid the two pitches on top of each other, they looked like the same pitch. They were not the same pitch. One broke, one did not. The hitter had no way to know which was coming. Neither, it turned out, did the statistical record books, because at the point deGrom threw that pitch, his ERA was 0.56. And suddenly, nobody knew what to do with that number. Baseball has measured pitching for over a century. Wins, losses, ERA, strikeouts. A framework built to separate the good from the great. Scouts trusted their eyes. Analysts trusted their models. And for most of baseball history, those two things pointed in roughly the same direction. Then, 2021 arrived and broke both of them at the same time. Here is what everyone believed going into that season. deGrom was elite. 2 Cy Young Awards, back-to-back, historic strikeout rates. But elite had a ceiling. The models said so. Aging curves for pitchers show velocity declining through the late 20s. By 32, the typical arm is managing decline, extending a career through command and deception. deGrom was 32. The expectation was a great pitcher doing what great pitchers do as they age, finding new ways to survive. What actually happened was something no projection system was built to model. Through 10 starts, his ERA sat at 0.56. That figure had never been posted through 10 starts in the history of professional baseball, not since the mound was placed at its current distance from home plate in 1893. He was not stealing games with smoke and mirrors. He was not running an unsustainable strand rate. His FIP, fielding independent pitching, the number that strips out defense and luck and measures only what a pitcher controls, sat at 1.57. That is the thread this story follows, because FIP does not lie, and 1.57 is not an accident. This is the part where the investigation starts to get uncomfortable. When analysts pulled his Statcast data, they found a pitcher who was not just executing at an elite level. He was executing at a level the tools were not calibrated to handle. His fastball averaged 99.2 miles per hour, not peak velocity, average, at 32 years old. The aging curve said that was not supposed to be possible. His spin rate, his movement profile, his release point consistency, every underlying metric pointed upward, not toward decline. The models had predicted a great pitcher getting older. What they found instead was a great pitcher getting better. If you want to understand why that matters, subscribe now, because the number we are about to look at is the reason this story is different from every other dominant season you have seen. The number is his WHIP through 12 starts, 0.51, walks plus hits per inning pitched, the simplest measure of how often a pitcher lets someone reach base. A full season WHIP below 0.90 is considered elite. The best pitchers in the game chase it all year. deGrom was doing it at roughly half that level for the first 3 months of the season. Hitters were not making contact. They were not getting on base. They were, in the words of one analyst writing at the time, surviving him, not hitting him. What the pitch tunneling data showed was why. Tunneling measures how similar two pitches look to a hitter as they travel the first 40 feet toward the plate. That window, 40 feet, roughly the point of no return for a hitter's decision, is where games are won or lost. deGrom's fastball and slider launched on paths so close to identical that hitters had no information to work with until the ball was already past them. His slider generated a whiff rate above 40% on its own. Paired with a fastball at 99 miles per hour on the same visual plane, it became something hitters described in the press as genuinely unfair. An overlay of the two pitches published that spring showed them tracking identically for more than half their journey. One broke, one did not. The batter had to guess. Most guessed wrong. Then July 7th arrived. Shoulder inflammation. Shut down for the season. 16 starts? Done. The record Bob Gibson set in 1968, a 1.12 ERA for a full season, remained untouched. The official history books registered a great but incomplete season, and here is the crack in the story that most coverage missed entirely. deGrom's 2021 was not incomplete because he ran out of ability. It was incomplete because of a structural failure in a ligament, the kind of random physical event that can happen to any arm operating at that level of stress. Every leading indicator, velocity, spin rate, whiff rate, barrel rate allowed, pointed toward a pitcher still ascending. The data suggested he had not peaked. The injury did not reveal decline. It revealed nothing about the pitcher at all, only the fragility of the body delivering the pitches. And that is where the real investigation lands. Baseball's statistical frameworks were built to reward durability. ERA measures runs allowed across a full season. WAR values playing time as much as performance. Wins require a team. Every traditional number in the sport carries a hidden assumption that the pitcher finished what he started. deGrom's career, and specifically 2021, exposed the gap in that logic. 15 starts of historically unprecedented pitching counted for less in the record than 30 starts of very good pitching by a healthier arm. The Statcast era exists precisely to capture what the old numbers missed, and what Statcast showed every time deGrom took the mound was a pitcher operating in a register the game had not seen before. A 1.57 FIP is not luck. It is not sequencing. It is not a hot streak. It is a pitcher controlling every variable within his control at a level that made the measuring tools look insufficient. The question 2021 left behind is not whether deGrom was the best pitcher in baseball that year. He was. The question is what we do with 15 starts that broke every model we had and then stopped before anyone could prove it would last. That is what it means to break baseball. Not a full year. Just enough to prove the full year was possible. What made that stretch particularly difficult to process in real time was the context surrounding it. The Mets entered 2021 with legitimate playoff expectations. deGrom was not the ace of a rebuilding team with nothing to lose. He was supposed to carry a contender into October. Every start lost after July 7th was a start the rotation could not replace. When analysts looked at what his replacements posted, ERAs above 4, WHIPs above 130, the gap became its own kind of data. Teams do not just pay for what a pitcher does when healthy. They pay for the distance between him and the alternative. In 2021, that distance was larger than it had ever been for any pitcher in the Statcast era. And then it disappeared.